Ladies and gentlemen, it is very likely that hockey will be back this summer. So get out those martinis and sit outside in the 100-degree heat while you watch a bunch of grown men skating around on ice. I know, bizarre times for us all. Good afternoon and welcome to the podcast. I'm Nick Drago. Today on the show, it's round 3 of our simulated Stanley Cup Playoffs. Who's going to make it to the finals? You're about to find out. Stick with us, friends, because sports starts now. And welcome to the Sports Podcast with me, your host, Nick Drago. Now, usually on this show, we talk about all the sports news and information from the previous week and look at what to expect over the next week, month, year, whatever. Today on the show, we are going to be continuing our Stanley Cup series. Yes, so far we've simulated the first 2 rounds. Now we're up to round 3. There are 4 insanely good teams remaining. The Lightning, the Capitals, the Golden Knights, and of course, the Colorado Avalanche. So what we're going to do today is talk about all 4 of those teams, how the simulation went, and we'll go from there. For those of you who didn't watch part 1 and 2, now's a good time to go back and see how these teams got to where they are. Quick explanation: we used a Monte Carlo simulation. Each game was each game was simulated 10,000 times before the results were accumulated. So, yeah, exciting stuff. Let's take a look and see how all of these teams did. So our first matchup here is the Lightning taking on the Washington Capitals. So the Lightning in the first round was able to get past oh my gosh, who did they were able to get past the Maple Leafs fairly easily. Second round had them pinned up against the Bruins. Of course, the Bruins had a very good season. What really was going for the Lightning, though, and I think has gone for them all year, or at least in my head throughout these simulated playoffs, really, they were the hottest team coming down the stretch. They started off pretty lousy. There was a point where them and the Maple Leafs were dead last in the standings, or pretty much out of the playoffs. And then come the turn of the new year, I suppose the turn of the decade, 2020, right? Am I right? Yeah, at that point, then they really started picking up their game. I would say that even though Stamkos is constantly hurt, he's recovering from surgery right now, having him come back to the lineup for simulated playoffs is for the regular playoffs, but even in the simulation, is going to be a huge factor. This is a close series. Capitals won all 3 of their meetings this year. Capitals won the last time these two faced off. That was the year they won the Stanley Cup. And realistically, this series actually went a little surprising. So the Lightning won the first 3 games, 2-0, 5-4 in overtime, 7-4. And then the Capitals really came out strong and won 3 straight. So they actually pushed to Game 7, almost coming back from a 3-0 deficit. You know, once you're down that 3-0, it's really hard to come back. Even to win 3 games and push it to a Game 7 is huge. And in our simulation, the Lightning won this in overtime. I mean, you couldn't ask for a more exciting series to watch, at least from Game 4 through 7. Things really, I guess, started to come together for the Capitals. They have a lot going for them. You know, Holtby, no, he has not been lights out this year. It is a contract year, though, so, you know, he's definitely primed to make a deep run in the playoffs. But in the end, the Lightning, they've overcome adversity all year. And I think they're a faster team. I think they're a stronger team. They've let up much less goals than the Lightning. Than the Capitals have. So, in my head, I think this was totally justified. Lightning going to the Stanley Cup Finals for the East. The Capitals, I guess I forgot to say how they got there. They beat the Penguins. They beat the Hurricanes. They beat the Flyers. Nothing too challenging. Moving on, Golden Knights and Avalanche. So, where are we at here? So the Golden Knights in the first round, they got a big win over the Jets, and realistically, they look pretty good throughout this entire playoffs. They struggled a little bit against Calgary, actually ended up winning Game 7 in overtime, but the Golden Knights are, in my head, absolutely a phenomenal team. The problem is the Avalanche are young. They're fast. No, they don't have deep playoff experience, but this is going to be a weird year regardless. I think the Avalanche really can justify this thing. I wouldn't be surprised if the Golden Knights were to win this series, but the Avs, they're averaging 3.4 goals per game. They're only letting in about 2.7. The Knights have a much smaller margin between those two statistics. So in this series, the Avalanche ended up winning Game 1, 4-1. Then they won Game 2. Series got tied, Game 3 and 4, with the Knights scoring 3 goals in each. And then 5 and 6 both went to, drumroll please, I'm just kidding, both went to the Avalanche. So the Avs, moving into the finals, they'll play the Lightning. Interesting team. I honestly wouldn't have expected the Avalanche. There's so many good teams in the West. Although this season in particular, I can't say there are so many good teams in the West. There are a lot of teams on the West side of the spectrum that don't have a ton of playoff experience. Yes, you have the Predators, who made it there last 2 years ago. Or was it 2 years ago at this point? Or would it be 3? It'd be 3 years ago. Yeah, 3 years when they lost to the Penguins. So the Predators have some playoff experience. The Golden Knights have been to a final before. The Blues obviously winning it last year. But their Blues aren't exactly having the best season right now. Then you have teams like the Flames, the Avalanche, the Oilers, who aren't necessarily the strongest playoff team. The Jets. I'm not super shocked with the Avalanche coming out. I really thought the Golden Knights would have been the better team here. But really looking at them statistically, I actually do really like what the Avalanche have put together. So Lightning and Avs, they'll be our final Stanley Cup matchup. We're going to have that in round 4 in just a few hot weeks. No, it'll be just a short time from now. Next week, really. Next week we'll do that episode. And then we'll have our simulated champion. And then June 1st is when they're saying training camps are going to start. They'll do like a little training camp. They'll end the season on these neutral sites. And then July, we can expect some hockey through July and August. And then really, that just gives them a month. Not even. Training camps are usually September, October-ish, so really gives them a month to prepare for the next season, which now that I think about it, that's kind of bonkers. I mean, maybe they'll just push this next season back just a little bit to compensate, but they need to have a playoff. I don't think it was necessary for them to finish out the season. Yes, there are bubble teams. Yes, they're going to want to recoup some money from advertising and whatnot by airing all these games. I mean, think about how many people are so desperate for sports right now. My guess is basketball will go along a similar time frame, but we haven't heard as much about what the NBA is planning to do as we have about hockey. Baseball hasn't really gone anywhere right now, and football still planning to start the season as is. So right now, hockey could be the only sport in town, and that is very enticing for some of these teams who, want to at least make a little bit of money from being on TV and having advertising deals and everything else. Yeah, you're going to lose a lot by not having fans in the seats. But, hey, Stanley Cup champion could also mean a lot of money for the team that wins. People are going to want to buy merchandise and gear and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I always think about things financially in that regard. But, we could be seeing some hockey soon. So, exciting stuff. Friends, thank you so much for tuning in for yet another exciting episode of this podcast. Sports with Nick Drago. If you like what you heard, find me on SoundCloud, Twitter, YouTube, and the Facebook. Also, a special thank you to Johanna Drago. She is the content editor, logo designer, and set designer of this podcast. The music here for the show is a song called Golden Sunrise by Josh Woodward. A link to his website can be found in the show notes. Special thanks to our social media warriors, including Joe Calabro, Mary Kay, and Gary Albert. Lois Butler, who else likes to listen to a show? Jorge, we're going to give Jorge a shout out this week. I just kind of mix it up as I go. It's all good. And don't forget to tip your waitresses, spay and neuter your pets, all those fun things. Actually, now's not really a good time. We should be social distancing. So maybe hold off on like going to a restaurant and tipping a waitress and then having a pet spayed. I don't know. I'm going off on a tangent here, which means that I am going cuckoo bananas stuck inside like the rest of you. So thank you for joining me once again on this show. And you can shoot me an email, sports3xpodcast@gmail.com. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and Twitter at me. Tweet. And you know, all the fun doo-doos that you do. You can TikTok me, but I'm not going to see it because I don't know what that is. Although I do like the dances. Those are fun. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for joining us, friends, and see you in time for my regular show, which also will be tonight. Booyah! Did I just not that? Nope.